June 28, 1914. Sarajevo wakes beneath a quiet summer sun. The Miljacka River glides through the city like a silver thread, reflecting the pale light of morning. Church bells echo softly in the distance. Market stalls open. Carriages roll over cobblestone streets. To the untrained eye, it is an ordinary day. But beneath the calm, something is tightening. Europe, though silent, is already trembling. Empires stand armed but unmoving. Alliances lie coiled like springs. Millions of soldiers, scattered across borders, exist in a state of readiness, waiting for a signal no one fully understands. And here, in this modest Balkan city, history is about to ignite. A motorcade turns a corner. Inside one of the cars sits Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Moments later, gunshots break the silence. Sharp, sudden, irreversible. Two bullets tear through the air, and with them, through the fragile illusion of peace. In that instant, the world does not yet know, but the war has already begun. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was not, in itself, the cause of World War I. It was the spark. For decades, Europe had been constructing a machine of war, carefully, deliberately, and dangerously. Two great alliance systems divided the continent. On one side stood the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. On the other, the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. These alliances were not merely agreements. They were commitments, binding promises that ensured any local conflict could escalate into something far greater. At the same time, nationalism burned fiercely across Europe. In the Balkans, Slavic populations sought independence from Austro-Hungarian control. Serbia, in particular, had become a focal point of this unrest, dreaming of a unified Slavic state. Austria-Hungary saw this as a threat. Germany saw Austria-Hungary as its indispensable ally. Russia saw itself as the protector of Slavic peoples. And Britain and France watched, wary of Germany's growing power. The stage was set. All it needed was a trigger. The assassination in Sarajevo is often described as the beginning. But in truth, the war did not erupt in a single moment. It unfolded like a chain reaction. Austria-Hungary did not immediately declare war. Instead, it paused. It calculated. And then, on July 23, 1914, it delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, harsh, deliberate, and designed to provoke rejection. Serbia accepted most of the demands, but not all. It was enough. On July 28, Austria-Hungary declared war. And then, the machinery began to move. Unlike the wars of centuries past, this conflict would not be fought with swords, shields, or even simple rifles. World War I would be a war of machines. Industrial power had transformed warfare into something unrecognizable. Armies were no longer limited by manpower alone. They were fueled by factories, railways, and mass production. Rifles could fire rapidly and accurately over hundreds of meters. Machine guns, capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute, could annihilate entire formations in seconds. Artillery, the true king of the battlefield, could strike targets miles away with devastating explosive force. Railroads allowed entire armies to mobilize with unprecedented speed. Telegraphs carried commands across vast distances in moments. And above all, there was scale. Millions of men, thousands of guns, an entire continent preparing to collide. Each nation entered the war with confidence. Germany possessed one of the most disciplined and efficient armies in the world. Its strategy, the Schlieffen Plan, aimed to defeat France quickly before turning east against Russia. France, driven by a desire for revenge after its defeat in 1871, prepared for an aggressive offensive to reclaim lost territory. Russia, vast and seemingly inexhaustible, mobilized enormous numbers of troops, though often lacking modern equipment. Britain, though smaller in land forces, commanded the most powerful navy on Earth and maintained a highly professional expeditionary force. Austria-Hungary, though internally fragile, still fielded a large army determined to crush Serbian resistance. Each believed the war would be short, decisive, glorious. They were all wrong. As July turned to August, declarations of war spread across Europe like wildfire. Germany declared war on Russia, then on France. Then it invaded Belgium to outflank French defenses. Britain, bound by treaty to protect Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany. Within days, the entire continent was at war. And then, the first true test came. The German army advanced with precision and speed, sweeping through Belgium in a massive, coordinated assault. Columns of soldiers stretched for miles. Artillery thundered. Cavalry scouted ahead. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. But then, they encountered resistance. Belgian forces, though smaller, fought fiercely. Fortresses opened fire. Bridges were destroyed. Civilians fled as entire towns became battlegrounds. And for the first time, the illusion of a swift victory began to crack. As the German advance pushed deeper into France, the scale of destruction intensified. Machine guns cut down advancing infantry in horrifying numbers. Artillery barges turned fields into wastelands of mud and fire. The air itself seemed to tremble with violence. At the Battle of the Marne, French and British forces launched a desperate counterattack. For days, the fighting raged. Men marched, fired, and fell in endless cycles. And then, the German advance halted. It was a turning point. The war would not be quick. It would not be clean. It would become something far worse. For the soldiers, the reality of modern war was almost incomprehensible. They had marched to battle expecting honor, movement, and victory. Instead, they found themselves trapped, pinned down by machine gun fire, bombarded by unseen artillery, surrounded by the screams of the wounded and the dying. The battlefield became a place of chaos and terror. Explosions erupted without warning. Poison gas, an unseen and merciless weapon, crept across trenches, suffocating those who could not escape. Men spoke of the sky itself turning against them, of death arriving without form or warning. Some began to see the war in almost supernatural terms, as if humanity had unleashed something it could no longer control. By late 1914, the war had settled into a grim stalemate. Both sides dug in. Trenches stretched from the North Sea to the Swiss border, a continuous line of fortifications, barbed wire, and mud. Attempts to break the stalemate resulted in catastrophic losses. Thousands of men would charge across open ground, only to be cut down within minutes. Command structures struggled to adapt. Strategies that once brought victory now led only to slaughter. The battlefield had changed, but the thinking had not. And so, the war consumed men, in numbers never seen before. Despite its destructive power, modern warfare was not without limits. Ammunition had to be produced, transported, and distributed on a massive scale. Artillery required constant resupply. Machine guns could overheat. Rifles jammed in the mud. Fuel for vehicles was limited. Communication, though improved, was still fragile. Lines could be cut, messages delayed. And above all, the human element remained a constraint. Soldiers grew exhausted. Morale faltered. Command decisions, often made far from the front, could not fully grasp the reality of the battlefield. The war machine was powerful, but it was not perfect. But what if? What if the chain reaction had been broken? What if Austria-Hungary had hesitated? What if Germany had restrained its support? What if diplomacy had prevailed over escalation? The assassination in Sarajevo might have remained a regional crisis, a localized conflict in the Balkans. Europe might have avoided the catastrophe that followed. No trenches stretching across France. No millions lost in a war of attrition. No collapse of empires. No Russian Revolution. No rise of extremist ideologies fueled by the aftermath of war. The 20th century might have unfolded differently. But history does not bend to possibility. It moves forward through choices made in moments of tension. On that summer morning in Sarajevo, the world did not appear to change. There were no armies marching, no guns firing across borders. Only 2 shots, echoing briefly through a quiet street. But those shots set something in motion. A sequence of decisions, alliances, and mobilizations that could not be undone. The day World War I began was not defined by a single event, but by the moment humanity crossed a threshold, from which there was no return. And as Europe descended into war, the modern age of destruction had truly begun.